want to get into something very interesting here, which I've wanted to know, and I think a lot of my viewers have wanted to know, is what does it take to get a product review by a major magazine?
It's interesting. I just put out a video last week where I talked about there's a new organization about to launch, the AIPI or AIPA, the Association of International Audiophile Publications. The whole point of that association is to agree to and uphold a code of ethics when it comes to publication, because too often, and so often now that most of you viewers out there may actually think it's the norm, there's a thing that you've probably heard of, Jay. It's called pay to play.
Yes, pay to play.
Yeah. So a company walks up to a magazine, says, I'll buy a cover and I'll buy a 2-year contract for $80,000. I want a great review and I want it on the cover. Well, that's not the way responsible journalism used to work. Right. And that is what's going on quite frequently with a lot of the majors and some of the minors. Without that, what it takes to get a review is to create some kind of interest, some kind of excitement, whether that be through shows, through creative ads, through people like you or me hearing something and going out and talking about it. Dude, it's really tough. I mean, I know a lot of magazines that are like, we're not going to review any more products from these guys because we've done 30 of them over the last 10 years. So it's very challenging. And it's really tough for new manufacturers who have probably a really good product to get on those radars. That was
the reason why I was asking. These new companies that are, grinding day in, day out just to be noticed, just to gain, that extra eyeballs on them, right? Through a magazine review, and they are completely turned down. And, I don't know if it's because they're not paying for advertisement.
They're not advertising.
Right. So
that's the crux of it. It's a shame.
But it's something, what's interesting is what you said to me is if a product has generated enough buzz and interest, right, around the industry, to your point, through marketing, through shows, through just, YouTubers owning it, and there's a lot of talk about that. You're saying that could actually make it interesting for a magazine to say, you know what, we've heard about you because we've seen a lot about you. We might want to talk about, perhaps they might be more open to reviewing your product when there's a lot of talk about the product.
Sure.
Right?
Well, think about it, Jay. If there's been some buzz and there's an interest already in a groundswell, one of the majors takes that product in and reviews it. It's good for their business. It sells more magazines. It sells more advertising. And as much as I hate to admit it, it is a business too.
The next question will be a question that I think many of you guys have been wondering about, and that is any reason why we never see a bad review published.
The reason, it's multi-layered. Okay, I mean, there's really a lot of good reasons if you give me a chance to get into this a little bit. Now, I've had this question a lot over the years. I've even done a video about it. But what's the fascination with a negative review? I mean, from my perspective, a negative review serves absolutely no useful purpose. There's only a few reasons you would write one. Okay, one reason, and I've seen this, is that it might be for the writer to feed his ego. It's a way of saying, look at me, I'm so smart, I'm so clever. Okay, to those writers, guys, get over yourself, get into therapy. Okay, you don't need that. But there's also this thought. A single negative review really would prove nothing. I go back to my point about the synergy of a system. It may be just that there's a mismatch to the system or the room, or, because publishing a bad review could erroneously damage a company, that, especially if it was simply because of a mismatch, a system problem. I think it's a monumental waste of time, space, and resources. And honestly, the conspicuous lack of a review of a piece of gear should serve to tell you that there may not be a reason anybody wants to review it. I mean, it may not be that good a piece. And plus, dude, space, even on the web, costs money. Why waste the expense writing about something that isn't that great when you can be sharing information on a product that people should be paying attention to?
So, and I will tell you this, I agree with everything you just said. I'm 100% in alignment with that. For me, what I've noticed on my YouTube channel throughout the last 2.5 years, videos where I specifically say something about a particular brand, where I literally call them out, they get the biggest hits. They get the most views. People love, they love controversy. People, YouTube viewers, and I gotta believe even articles, even print is the same. People love, did you see the article this person published about this? Oh my God, he trashed him. People love that. And I think the reason why that is because maybe it is like the outlier where, okay, I read 30 good reviews. Can we get one that's not the same? Something that sounds different, that rings different. And I think that is the reason why people are just wondering. And to your point, I get it. Like, look, you're doing a disservice by essentially pooping on a brand that is trying to make it, right? If anything, it should be constructive criticism behind closed doors, letting them know, guys, you got a lot of work to do here. You got a lot of work to do here. This is definitely not worth $10,000 or $5,000. Look at your competition. Look at all the resources available to you before you priced it at where you priced it. Absolutely no, you had no place on this shelf with these components of the same price.
Well, you'd be surprised, Jay, how often that, well, not that it happens routinely, but how often that can happen. When I get a product in that does not really work in my system or excite me, I simply return it. And in fact, one of my stipulations when I go into a review with a new company is, if for whatever reason, I don't find this to be of merit, I'll just send it back on review. But also try and think about, why would I want to spend hours and weeks or maybe months of my time listening to something that doesn't blow up my skirt and has no benefit being described to anybody? I do understand. And I go back to a point about following particular writers or reviewers. I hate to tell people they should be able to read between the lines, because that shouldn't have to be an option. But if you know a writer well enough, you can tell when they're pointing out the highlights of a system, and because they don't really think it sucks, that it's probably worth somebody's time, that it may actually please a number of people and be a good product. But dude, I just don't have the time to waste writing about something that doesn't blow up my skirt. Because honestly, a lot of people, when they read my work, says the emotion jumps off the page, that I'm excited about what I'm writing about. That's what I want. If I'm not excited about it, why the hell would you be?
Right. Yeah.
So, and look, I'm not saying that negative reviews have absolutely no merit. I don't think they have a lot of merit. I just don't see the value. And again, I go back to the point, if you haven't seen a review of a product that everybody's been talking about or has come out, then there's probably a good reason for it. It's not because they won't send me one to review.
I agree. And just to be candid with the viewers here, I have been approached by some of these new brands that have very expensive products. Okay, they have approached me to review a product. They have approached me to review whatever they have. Positive feedback, may have reviewed it, or they are trying to figure out another outlet to gain more viewers, more exposure, more eyeballs on their product. And I have been very open with them, and I have told them, you can send me the product. I'll listen to it. And to your point, it could be hours, weeks listening to this product, right? And I have to accommodate it, use different cables, to use different, amplification or pre-amplification, right? To try to set it up for success, right? But that doesn't guarantee you that I will put it and publish it on my YouTube channel. Like I have told them that. So for me, it's more like I have to definitely be blown away by it. I have to believe in it for me to be able to articulate what the hell I'm hearing. I will not put product on my channel that I simply don't believe in. I just won't. Okay. And if I ever, and by the way, there might be a couple of opportunities soon. If I ever display something on my channel, it will be because I truly believe in what I'm hearing and what I'm listening to. There has been probably, I would say this year so far, I've had about 6 different products that came in that I quietly evaluated, and they just didn't do it for me. And I was very honest, and I said, look, this is what's happening, and I just don't want to do a disservice here. I think you guys are working hard, and these are the things that I think I need to hear. This is not happening. Maybe the bass is not there, the high frequency, whatever the case may be. I try to articulate these things because, again, constructive criticism, the feedback that they need to go back to the drawing board and decide what improvements they need to make. So I'm 100% in alignment with what you said.
And that does happen, buddy. There are times where I've had a product come in and said, you really need to look at this aspect or whatever. Right. But don't you really believe that by not wasting your viewers' time with stuff that doesn't light your fire, and dude, look, you work full time, you're trying to build a full-time channel. You don't have time to piss away on meaningless efforts. And buddy, it's what it is. It's a meaningless effort. Having a negative review of something, first of all, like I said, you could be doing a disservice to that company. It could be something with your room or your system, but it isn't. Your viewers, yeah, they like negative stuff. I get it, but they don't really want that. They want to know what they should enjoy, not what they should hate.
What they should be spending their hard-earned money on, because there are so many options available to us that it becomes difficult. It's like going to your local supermarket. 30, 40 different brands of cereal. Which one is the best one for me? And it's hard to be able to, because everything looks good and the colors are there, and you're trying to figure out which one is the healthiest for my diabetes. You're trying to figure out things, right? So it's very difficult. I agree. Now, another question here that I think it's going to be, I want to know personally, how long do you live with a product before you review it?
Well, it depends. Sometimes there are stipulations from the manufacturer. I had a company that, a European tube manufacturer who built this very well thought of tube amp that really wanted my review. And I said, fine, I need a minimum of 45 days with it. I would prefer 90, but I have to have at least 45 days. It has to settle. It has to run in. I have to put it through its paces. I have to try different things with it. Okay, fine. It lands. I have it unboxed. I have it set up. I have it turned on and running in. 11 days later, are you done yet? Can you ship it back yet? I'm like, sure, I can ship it back. Here, take it. Dude, I'm not playing those games. We agreed to a minimum of 45 days.
Wow.
You know yourself. How long does it take you to get a speaker set up in a room? It can take weeks. It can. Okay. Now, when you get really good at it, it's usually hours.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Still. And it's just, it takes time. I'll guarantee you. Okay. And I've had people call me crazy about this. Oh, you can't really be sure. It could be just a bullshit reaction. But I can pretty much tell you within 90 seconds of hearing a product whether it's worth my time to review it. It's rare that it doesn't work that way. But that 90-second kernel of telling me that there's stuff there to examine, you can't get a complete picture of something in 2 hours. It just isn't likely. I typically prefer 90 days, typically, and that's a common time for loan reviews. What was the original question, buddy? I'm sorry.
How long do you live with a product before you review it?
Like I said, a minimum for me is 45 days. 90 really gives me the chance to soak in and pretty much be comfortable that I haven't missed anything of any merit.
Do you ever consider system synergy when you evaluate a new component?
Always.
For me, it's like this. Look, I have seen reviews.
You can't not consider it.
Well, okay, so let me ask you this then. Okay, so we see reviews all the time on different magazines, and they review a particular amplifier, any brand. They insert it into the system, and then they tell you what it does and doesn't do. Okay, but we never see the thought process of saying, hey, we need the amp and matching preamplifier, because it's the synergy of both components that really gives you the idea of what the manufacturer was trying to do. Boulder is a perfect example for me. personally. I try to, be honest, I almost sold a 3060 Boulder behind me, and 3 days after I brought it home, I wanted to sell it because I didn't like it until I got the line stage out of the box. And I realized it needed its sibling to do it and really take off, or to fire on all cylinders.
Well, this is a common problem, especially with the majors. You know, it was an uphill battle for me to review a couple of different preamps with their matched monoblocks, because the magazine's assertion was, well, it should work fine with everything. Well, yes, it should. The point is, you want me to tell you why it is good or bad. And if the people who designed it built a preamplifier, their line stage passes DC to 500,000 cycles per second, and the preamp you want me to use doesn't do that, maybe, just maybe, I'm not going to get the best out of those amplifiers.
Right.
And yeah, I apologize for my glib response. Yeah, immediately. Yes, of course. You can't not consider it. But it's, again, maybe I'm too close to the forest to see the trees, because I've been doing this so long that I know this is a thing. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that, and I've had this happen where I'd get a piece and go, you know, I don't get it. Let's send the line stage, or let's send the power supply for the DAC. You know, okay. And all of a sudden you're like, well, shit, now I get it.
Right.
I mean, this was what you had intended all along.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The intention. Yep. And that's what I think. That's something that I've always wondered when reviews.
A lot of magazines don't do that, buddy.
And, you know, and I can understand from this perspective. Well, if you're looking for an amplifier and they're only interested in the amplifier, how can I tell them don't buy the amplifier unless you have the preamplifier, right? That's not going to do a service to the brand either. So I can understand that the component needs to be able to dance on its own in your rig.
The component should.
But to get the real picture of what it does, full scoop, you definitely need the components that it was designed around. Because when they build them, they don't build them for every single component out there, right? They build them with their own components. They know
normally
the impedance.
Voicing is a big part of design, of product design. Voicing is a huge part of product.
Right.
And that's why most major speaker companies have massive tube amps, small tube amps, Class D amplifiers, AB amplifiers, Class A amplifiers from Switzerland, America. I mean, you need to hear what your system, especially with a speaker, what your speaker's true voice is. And if you only use one device to test it, you're locking yourself into whatever flaws or advantages that one device has. And when you pair it with something else, you may get a surprisingly different result. So I completely agree with this. Yeah.
Another question that I have been very curious about is, when you introduce a new component into your system, should you be repositioning your speakers?
Possibly, but in my experience, I'm trying to think of when that's really made a huge difference, and it has a couple of times. For the most part, a speaker's interaction is with the room. The difference in how it performs with different components and electronics in front of it rarely have that much impact on a speaker's interaction with a room. It's possible, I won't deny it. I don't see that as a major, I don't see that as a major consideration. I have seen it, especially when I was dealing with smaller monitors, really good two-way small speakers. But in a speaker like what's behind you or the monsters I have, can I put my system on the screen for a minute?
Sure, go ahead. Let me.
I'm putting it behind me. There's what I sit in front of every day. Can you see that?
Yeah, hold on. Let me. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Let me see. If you talk, we'll see the full screen.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yeah, awesome. Damn.
Yeah, that's behind me there. So those speakers took, believe it or not, probably about an hour and a half to dial in. I will admit that I have a pretty good sense of doing that, and I had a little bit of help. The guy that designed the loudspeakers was here to help me do it. But I have not found any reason to move these with any electronics or sources that have come through here since. I've not found any deficiencies that I felt could be adjusted positively or negatively by repositioning the speakers, because, you know, as I said, the room's 46 feet long, so it's, and those are big speakers, so their interaction is more tied to the room than to the stuff in front of it, for the most part. Granted, every change I make is audible. Cabling, power cables, cartridges, DACs, tubes in the DACs. Yes, you can hear everything. I would tell you that in my estimation, that isn't a major consideration. I'm not saying it could never be. I'm saying I don't see it as something to be worried about.
Okay.
Make any sense?
That makes sense. That makes sense. Do you review components with the stock power cords they come with?
Yeah, it depends.
I put you on blast. I want to know.
Yeah, look, if it's a $2,500 DAC, then yes. Okay. If it's a $50,000 DAC, then no.
Okay.
You know, I mean, do I maybe listen to it for a while with that cord? Yeah. But I don't think any of these guys really think that you're going to use their $35 Belden power cord when they send you a $50,000 DAC. I mean, do you think MSB expects you to use the power cables that came in the box?
No, I see what you're saying, but you know what I was thinking about is, if anything, the cheaper electronic would benefit from a better power cord more than the expensive one, which is supposed to be built to like cost no object with incredible power supplies and filtering, and I'm assuming.
Maybe.
So there's yeah.
Maybe. I do, especially when it's an affordable product. I want to hear it the way you get it out of the box. Okay.
Right. I agree.
But also, when I get a bigger product, I may try that, but I usually don't bother with. I mean, usually when the stuff goes back, the cord's still wound up with the wire tie around it. Because I really, you ask Kevin, and he will tell you that his cords are adequate.
Okay.
But nobody, I don't know any, I know a couple guys that have 450 monos, 450S stereos, 452 mono blocks. They all use their preferred power cord.
Right.
And honestly, when you're spending 150 grand on a pair of amps, I don't think putting a more appropriate power cord on them is going to be a consideration.
Okay. Now, since you use aftermarket power cords on the expensive gear, do you have a variety of power cords at your disposal?
Oh yeah.
Okay, great.
Dude, I've probably got, I'll bet I've got $120,000 worth of cables back.
That's what I wanted to know, because as you know, the whole mix and matching,
oh God, yes.
What goes with what, it's important.
Oh yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah, I have quite the stable cable.
How do you feel about tweaks? For instance, fuses?
Well, so it's interesting. Okay. Do I think they're the most important thing in a system? Absolutely not.
Agreed. Yep.
You might recall, or maybe not, when I started writing for Soundstage back in 75, 6, somewhere in there, I started a column called Synergizing, where I spent every month, I gave you some tweak or some inexpensive thing you could do to isolate, to improve, to somehow better your system. I've reviewed a lot of fuses, and some of them you can hear the difference.
Yep.
Some of them, it's the last bastion of setting up a system for me.
That's one of the things I said. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't rule them out. I don't think. By the same token, if a $30 fuse makes an amazing improvement in your amplifier, there's probably something wrong with that amplifier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do I think they have merit? Yes,
they do.
But the differences, while they're mathematically or numerically tiny, if you were to measure them in terms of quantity of change, some of them may have magical qualitative performance gifts. They may bring a level of enjoyment that you don't get without it.
Correct.
Do I have a problem with that? No. Do I think that that's the important way to start setting up your system? No. Get the gear, get the cables, get the setup right, then worry about tweaks.
The way I articulate it is work on your macros. Do not worry on the micros, because that to me is the final finishing touches. When you've already worked on the bigger pictures, the bigger pieces, the bigger components, stop. I keep telling people, stop doing tweaks. If you don't even have the right power cores, if you don't even have the right, even a shelf for a component, right?
Yeah.
Why are you looking at fuses? Why are you looking at little tiny devices to improve the performance? And that's one. And number two, oftentimes these tweaks, sometimes you can't even hear them because the system is not highly resolving. It's not resolving enough for you to hear it.
Yeah, that's so there's a big, well, for in I think it was CES 2000. I was working with Harmonic Technology, and they're a cable company. They hired me to help them build their best cables. I walk into the room, the cables aren't dressed. They're coiled around, laying on shit. I'm like, you guys are nuts. You're a cable company. So I sent a guy out. I said, get me some paper cups, something, anything. And they came back with these paper cups. Well, actually, I think he got plastic cups. And we took them and we cut little half moons dimples on each side of them. And I redressed the cables so that interconnects or power cables crossed at 90 degrees. We got the speaker cables off of that goddamn pile carpeting in the Alexis Park. And, you know, the difference, well, so there were probably, I'm going to say there were probably 8 or 9 different people there setting up the room. All these guys were experienced setup guys. When we put the system back on, after doing nothing but getting the cables dressed and off the floor, they were all like, I'm like, guys, look. Static electricity through the carpet gets into the cables. The fact that a cable is an AC conductor, so the magnetic fields are constantly expanding, contracting. If they're being slurred by going into a carpet on one side and have air above them, it's going to make an audible difference. And the point that you make, Danny Ritchie at GR Research just did a video on getting cables off the floor. Mm-hmm. And one of the points he makes is exactly that. You may not hear it if your system isn't up to a certain quality.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not that your system isn't any good if you can't hear it. It's not that the tweak doesn't work if you don't hear it. It's just a matter of whether it applies to your system or not.
Every system is just there's no two systems that are alike. First of all, we live in different cities, different grids, power is not the same.
Even the humidity in your room.
Yep.
Makes a huge difference.
I agreed. Yeah. What would you say is the most important component in a system? This is a great question that I think a lot of our viewers want to know.